we're going to talk about the genre of Afrofuturism real quick. So, Latoya, when you hear the word Afrofuturism, what do you think of? So taking things part of the Black culture and then putting it to another level, like a futuristic level. Cool, all right, bet. DQ, same question. What do you think of when you hear Afrofuturism? Ultimate freedom for Black people. Word, cool. Yeah, Afrofuturism, we tell the story in a bunch of different ways, through our music, through our comics, through our writings and all that. But normally, if you see a bunch of people here on the screen, you see Erykah Badu, you see Sun Ra, you see Missy Elliott, you see Atlantis, the movie, you see Steven Universe. But these are all really American, these American people, right? People who are born in America, people who have a perspective on their Blackness because they were born in America. Which is great, you know, they're able to tell these special stories. But there's also another perspective called African futurism. So it varies a little bit differently because it's told by people who are actually on the continent. And when you're on the continent with a different culture, surrounded by another country that's got totally different views, but also, you know, not the same culture, it's a little different. The perspective is a little different. So people who are in Nigeria versus people who are in Ghana, it's a lot different than people who are in New York State and people who are in Ohio, because it's still part of the same state, still sharing a common history. So with that, you have African futurism. So African futurism is a genre of sci-fi stories rooted by African culture, geography, spirit, and perspective. It was coined by an author by the name of Nnedi Okorafor, who is a Nigerian-American author who wanted to challenge specific elements of Afrofuturism and build awareness around other elements of storytelling from an African experience. All right. And basically, I do have a video, I'll play it another time, but there are a lot of people who were Black who were telling her that, hey, no, this Afrofuturism is just a Black thing. She's Nigerian American. And they were telling her that, no, it's a purely American thing, so you can't tell us what it's gonna be. So she said, I bet I'm gonna come up with African futurism to combat that. So, so we have a special guest actually to talk about the subject of African futurism and Afrofuturism. As soon as I get my presentation back, let me make sure she's queued up. Yeah, okay, Stephanie's with us. All right, bet. Stephanie, I'll bring you on in just a second. I'm just gonna do a quick introduction for you to bring you on. So, Dr. Stephanie R. Toliver is a highly qualified authority on Black speculative fiction and how it can be applied in scholastic environments. So, she was almost kind of doing what Wakanda Alliance was doing before Wakanda Alliance got formed, which is dope. We appreciate her for that. She's a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder and an amazing journalist on Black speculative fiction, former high school English teacher, current Black girl otaku, established 1990. We're a little bit different than the new age otakus, you know what I'm saying? Those 90s kids, you know, we're a little bit different, you know what I'm saying? That you came up on the Sailor Moon and the Dragon Balls and all that stuff, so. Dr. Toliver is also the creator of readingblackfutures.com and a scholarship that centers how classrooms can use speculative fiction as a means to center Black joy and Black dreams. So everybody give it up for Dr. Toliver. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm sitting outside today.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. What's it like over there? What's the weather?
It's been like in the 90s. It's supposed to get up to like 90 something today.
Is it like drier there? Is it more humid or is it dry or is it like?
It's really dry over here. Like there's been a couple of days when there's been humidity and it's been weird to have humidity. So.
Gotcha. Well, welcome back to the program. You went mute. Did you go mute again? Okay. No, it's just a connection. I'm sorry. You're good. Sorry. You stopped speaking and your mouth was still moving. It threw me off for a little bit. But yeah, so Dr. Toliver, you joined us back in February for our panel. You were alongside one of the authors for the Black Panther and all that. And we're glad to have you back. So as you saw, the subject of today was African futurism versus Afrofuturism. So can you elaborate on that a bit more? And also first, I'll let you talk about yourself for a little bit and introduce yourself to the people. And then you can go in on how you came across this kind of debate that's going on.
Yeah, so I'm Stephanie Toliver. I was not established in the 90s. I was established in the 80s. But appreciate, appreciate it. So yeah, I do a lot with Black speculative fiction, specifically focusing on Black girls and Black girlhood and what that means to see us in different futures. And I guess when I'm thinking about Afrofuturism and African futurism, I don't see it as a debate. I see it as like a sisterhood, right? So two things that exist alongside each other that are not opposing one another, but that are there to enhance and grow each other simultaneously. Because I think that so much of when we're talking about like American Black people or Black people in different parts of the world, there's always the use of the language of opposition as if we cannot grow together. And so what I like about what Afrofuturism and what African futurism does is like, yes, there are two different ideas, but they grow alongside each other. So with Afrofuturism, like even though the word was coined by a white guy, Mark Derry, in the 1990s, like Black people have been doing Afrofuturism since before that word was a thing. Like that was just the way that we breathed and lived and existed. And so when I think about Afrofuturism, I just really think about how it's a way for Black authors and authors very broadly construed, because I think of text as a broad thing. It doesn't have to just be like books. It can be movies, it can be songs, it can be a lot of different things. It can be the way you move your body. But it's just a way to create new and possible realities for futures. It's a way to remember and what's the word I'm thinking, like not like reimagine, but like remember and just hold on to our past and counter some of the negative realities of our present all simultaneously. And like really looking at the ways that past, present, and future all influence each other at the same time. So time is not this linear construct in the ways that a lot of Western thinkers think about it, but as a cyclical thing where things kind of offshoot in different ways all the time. And when I think of African futurism, I think of the fact that, like, you know, a lot of Afrofuturism initially, the way that it was described, is a lot of Black people from the Americas. And so when we think about the stories that are present across the United States, like when a lot of time, even when it's a story that's set in Africa, a lot of times it's not written by the people who are within Africa. And so it's not an issue for that to happen because Black people do have roots. Like we exist in the Afrofuture, in the past of our homelands and in this present space. But there are people who are in Africa right now who have and need to be telling these stories too. And so when I think of African futurism, it's very similar in the way it's like reconstructing the present and also remembering the past and creating and elevating these positive possibilities in the future, but written from the perspective of people who are rooted in Africa in the right now, not necessarily saying that we are not rooted, because like I said, time is this really weird thing, but people who exist on that land in this moment versus like people who have ties to that land but do not necessarily exist on it in this moment. But once again, I see it as Afrofuturism and African futurism growing together alongside each other because African futurism, like I know Nettie is the one who, Dr. Nettie Kofra, let me make sure I put some respect on her name, but like she coined that term, but then initially I think about like her TED Talk and some of the work that she was doing before was Afrofuturism, right? And so like it stems alongside it. So the work that she was doing was alongside it. And so I think even the work that I'm doing now, when I do a lot of work with like Black speculative fiction, Afrofuturism, and I feel like my work exists alongside African futurism as well in hopes to, you know, just really this rethink some of the negative things that they keep trying to force upon us in this present, to remember the things that they're trying to force us to forget about our past, and to create the futures that they keep trying to take away from us. And I think that that happens alongside each other in both camps, no matter like which one that you're more looking into.
Dope. Thank you so much for that elaborate breakdown. We truly appreciate that. We know you got to go soon. The last thing I want to just ask you, we are doing an activity. We're going to craft a story, and we're being intentionally Afrofuturistic as opposed to, I think there's a certain technique when it comes to being intentionally Afrofuturistic when you're crafting a story. So what can we keep in mind when we're starting to build stories about using our Black experience, especially over here on the American side? You know, what do we keep in mind? What do we do? What do we keep away from to you think would feel like would do harm, not harm to Afrofuturism, but how do we keep certain elements in mind when we're crafting stories?
To me, I think Black people are Afrofuturism, like our everyday life. So there's no way for us to do harm in the ways that I think can be misconstrued. I think the first thing is to keep in mind who you are. Like a lot of times we start these stories and we imagine these characters in these different settings, but Afrofuturism starts in here. Like, who are you? And thinking about who you are is so essential to that work, because you can't be creating all these new worlds if you don't know yourself and the world that you are in this moment. And so like when I think about my work, whether it's fictional work or academic work, I always try to center like, who am I? Who are my people? Who is my community? Because these are the people, these are the groups, these are the places that I'm going to center first. And then from there, understanding that, like I said earlier, like Afrofuturism really deals with this cyclical nature of time. And so how are we going to embed our past, present, and future into whatever story we create? So when we're writing a story about, I don't know, a futuristic society on the moon in 3047, where are your ancestors in that? Where, how are they a part of this future? Because our future is built on the present and on the past. So making sure that we are honoring and doing that work, and not necessarily saying like you have to, I don't know, say the spiritual names of your ancestors and call for, like, you ain't gotta do all that if you don't want to. But like I know, for instance, in one of the things that I was writing, I did this little vignette on Savannah. So Savannah is where I had done some of my research. And in the vignette, I talk about just like, what is Savannah? What's the history of Black folks in Savannah before starting my research work? And so I do stuff like it's an old city where Black girls' dreams are often upended, but where the ancestors try to pull us down to remember the things that they knew long ago. And like, it's not a lot, but it's just acknowledging that past in my futuristic idea of whatever I'm talking about. And so I think that that's something that's necessary, is really figuring out how to play with time, um, remembering who you are, and also acknowledging that like there is no one right way to write your story. There's all these courses on like, oh, you got to write like this if you want people to read it, or it got to have these type of characters, or you got to have this type of content. But there's no one right way to write your story. Your story, your Afrofuturistic story does not have a map. You create that map. You create the way that that you want it to be seen, the way that you want it to be read. There is no like, here are the basics and the rules for writing it, because when you do that, that to me is a Western way of thinking as well, where there's all these rules and it has to be constructed in a certain way and guided by certain principles. Like, we ain't gotta do that. We make our own, and that's okay. And so to me, I think that those are the things that I keep in mind. Like, I can write my own story. My story starts with me, my community, my people, my spaces and places that have uplifted me, and my ancestors and culture that guides how I bring that into a story or into my work.
Wow. Yep. Unlimited source, unlimited potential. Yeah. So appreciate that stuff. That's dope. That's super dope. You got to go. So can you plug all things you got going on? You got Reading Black Futures. You got the Twitter popping all the time. I be seeing them. They be coming. They be like that. So go ahead and talk about.
Yeah. Okay. So my website is readingblackfutures.com, and I actually just launched that in April of this year because I had another site, and I did this updated site. I worked with a specialist to do websites, and the art on my website is from my friend Rufus Royster. His work is so dope and amazing, like just off the wall brilliant. Support him if you can. His link is at the bottom of the homepage of my website. And like my Twitter is at SR_Toliver, real easy to find me on that. I have a book that's coming out in November, and I'm very excited about that one. It's bridging kind of like, it's mostly fiction, but the first chapter is like the academic part that describes how it was created. So that comes out in November. And I mean, I have Instagram and stuff like that, but I'll never be on it. I'm real bad at that. Like, it's the same as my Twitter name, but it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, I gotta take pictures. And with this panini going on, like, I don't take no pictures really, because there ain't no point. I'm just in gym clothes every day. So once we get a little bit out of the panini, I'll start pictures and all that. But yeah.
Dope, cool. All right, and we know you're moving too, so send us your new address. We're gonna have a special T-shirt for you too. So look for.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, cool. All right, we appreciate you. Everybody give Dr. Toliver another round of applause. And we'll see you again soon, all right? People in the future.